here from Highland Firewise and with Prospect Firewise. I was just running to find my glasses. But we're here for a community conversation. It started, we've been around for 5 years, but we thought when the August 12th fire took place in Laveaga, and we had the CZU prior to that, we had some questions and concerns, and I know all you share them. So we said, why don't we have a gathering of the people who are handling these problems, and can they tell us what's the update? What's the latest? What are they doing? What can't they do? How can we get involved? So we thought this is a constructive conversation you want to have. And we have an amazing group of speakers from elected representatives, department heads, community organizations, and other agencies, and they all can tell you some piece of the puzzle. We aren't going to solve things today, but we want to know what the puzzle looks like, and how can we keep working on it together. This isn't a one-shot deal. We're going to have a follow-up after that Angela will tell you about. All the questions will be answered in one way or another. We have index cards, and after the presentation by the fire department, we'll pass baskets. You can go over and put your card in the basket, and those questions will be organized. So please listen, see where you fit into the conversation, what's not being taken care of, what you want to say thank you for. Everyone here is working really hard with limited resources and complex problems. Firewise is about fire awareness and education, but these days that means a lot. That means, what is evacuation planning? What is vegetation management? What is, how do we deal with unsheltered people who don't have a place to sleep? And we're gonna try and touch on all those subjects. We'll open it up, and then it's up to all of us to kind of continue the conversation. So before I pass this to my wonderful co-planner, Councilmember Shebra Kalantari-Johnson, and thanks to our team member Laura Lee Martin for putting us in touch. She will give you a further introduction, but just a few logistics. Our sign-in sheet is really important for us staying in touch with you, and any follow-up that we do after this event to answer your questions. So please do sign in. We have bathrooms over there, and I think that's it. So, but we've divided the format. We can't have everyone speak for the wonderful time they deserve. So we'll have a presentation by the fire department, and then questions by 7 presenters of our wonderful panels. And then in the question and answer period, we've asked other experts to be with us from the City Council, from UCSC, from different agencies. We have a CERT team member here on emergency management, emergency response team. So lots of options, places to go, and we're glad you're here with us. Thank you so much. So I'd like to introduce Councilmember Shebra Kalantari-Johnson, who was our co-planner and who helped us bring a lot of these wonderful people here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abby. And thank you to Angela and Laura Lee, and all of the Firewise leaders for connecting with me. You know, I have been talking to a lot of community members, and this is one of the things that's on the top of people's minds, is what are we doing around fire prevention and fire response when it comes? What are our lessons learned from what we experienced a couple of years ago in our community? So I was fortunate to connect with these really amazing leaders that have already done so much work in our community. And what we all kind of came to is that this is a bigger conversation. You see a lot of folks here because this is what it takes. It takes all of these individuals, it takes all of you, it takes all of us and beyond to really be able to address this really big concern and challenge in an effective way. And as Abby said, this is hopefully the beginning. We want to build a relationship with each other so that we can continue to have effective responses and we can continue to prepare. So the theme of tonight is preparation, communication, evacuation. And you'll hear that throughout, and I'm sure you'll all have some questions. So I'll leave it there. I know there's really wonderful presentations, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your questions. All right? I'm going to pass it to Supervisor Koenig. Oh, and sorry, I did want to say Councilmember Myers and Vice Mayor Watkins are here with me from the Santa Cruz City Council. So, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Also want to extend my thanks to Shebra and to Abby and to Laura Lee and everyone on the Firewise organizing committee who put this together. And of course, thank you all of you for coming out tonight. I will say now and say a million times that the best defense and response that our community has against fire is the Firewise program, because it's the only program that can really scale effectively to get everyone involved in addressing the immediate risks around their homes and in their neighborhoods, connected to the resources that are going to be most immediately available to them, your neighbors, and the collective resources you have during an emergency event, and like actively reducing risk. And so that's why I was happy to allocate some funds in last year's budget and this year's county budget to the Firewise program so that they could hire the first full-time coordinator. And that money has grown from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, and now I think they have over $1 million out in grant applications to continue scaling the program. And of course, we've also seen that program grow from just 9 neighborhoods before the CZU complex fires to now over 36, so 4-fold increase. So that's huge. And collectively, everyone involved in those programs has invested more than $2.5 million in vegetation management in a very short period of time. So that's very significant, and really can put money to work a lot faster than we can through the process of our county applying for state grants and trying to do big projects. That's an important piece too, as we'll talk about though. So after the CZU fires, the big thing that our county did was put together the Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience. And we did that because we looked at other communities that had faced similar disasters, most notably Sonoma County, after their 2 devastating fires, and this is something that they had done and other communities had done as well. And so the director of that new Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience, or OR3, is Dave Reed, who's here tonight. And he is also, for some of you may remember, a former 1st District analyst, so he knows the Prospect Heights community well. Now, as I said, most of the money that comes into our community for doing these larger vegetation management projects, and some that are notable, most notably the Summit shaded fuel break project that's going in right now. We're in the 2nd phase of that, and there's one more phase to come, and that really creates a fuel break along Summit Road to prevent fire from spreading from Santa Clara County into our county. We also have other big projects underway. We reallocated funding that was for undergrounding power lines in the beach areas to undergrounding power lines in the mountain areas, notably along SoCal San Jose Road. We were also installing 3 new alert wildfire cameras. Those also were up and running during the De La Viega fire here in August and were helpful. We're trying to increase mowing and maintenance along county roads. Also, I have to say I'm really impressed with the vineyard trail here in De La Viega that separates the neighborhood from the park, and I'm looking for ways to replicate the success of that program, which really combined both public access funds as well as vegetation management funds, replicate the success of that into other parts of the 1st District. So really all that work that involves applying for every state grant opportunity we can to bring millions more dollars into our community for vegetation management, that's Dave Reed's wheelhouse, and he'll be able to talk to you more about that later this evening. Of course, the other thing that is on a lot of people's minds, and I know because I hear from you, I have been hearing from you and your neighbors about the growing presence of increased illegal encampments and unmanaged encampments, particularly as we see the benchlands encampment being systematically closed. And it's it's a huge challenge. I mean, again, we're not going to solve everything here tonight. My office and myself and my analysts, we have really tried to address these consistently both as they come up, and now of course we're seeing more and more. Again, our county has took a similar response to we did to the fire problem and to homelessness, in standing up a new department, which is the Housing for Health Department. And we have the director of that department here tonight, Dr. Robert Ratner. Under Dr. Ratner's leadership, throughout the COVID crisis, we stood up more shelter beds than we've ever had in this community before, over 400 beds. Unfortunately, a lot of that was with one-time funding, and so we're starting to see a decrease of those total beds available as some of that one-time money goes away. Nevertheless, a Herculean effort on Dr. Ratner's part and other county workers. We've also launched a rehousing wave, giving out more housing vouchers and placing a couple of hundred people in permanent housing as we started to wind down those shelter beds. There's been now a couple of rounds of Project Home Key funding through the state. That's for permanent supportive housing. In the first round of Project Home Key, our county submitted 0 applications. And under the second round, thanks to Dr. Ratner's leadership, we submitted 4, 2 of which were funded. So that's the Park Avenue project, which is 36 new permanent beds, and the Veterans Village project up on Highway 9. Dr. Ratner's also been overhauling our continuum of care, governance structure, and really getting all the organizations that deal with homelessness to be better coordinated with our homeless management information system, so we're painting a clear picture of the population of people that are homeless at all times. What you'll hear from Dr. Ratner and you'll hear from myself is just the big problem here is there's not enough money, and it's not easy to take people's rights away from them. And that's a big challenge we're seeing as we systematically close that, and this is really the work that's happening in the city, the Benchlands encampment, is while there's not enough beds for everyone who's there, there's also everyone that's there is not taking the beds that are available. And we can't force them to take the open bed. So my time's up. We'll hear more about these topics later from, as I said, the 2 county experts we have here, and I'm happy to answer questions. And next up is, sorry.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you so much. Just a few housekeeping things. We did want to introduce our wonderful group here. And also, we do have a Spanish language translator, Laura Caldwell. Raise your hand if you need any questions answered. And we do have a timekeeper back there.
I neglected to introduce who's here from the city. So we have the 2 council members, as I mentioned, Tony Elliott, Director of Parks and Rec, Chief Escalante, our police chief, Tim Shields, our fire marshal, Chief Odie, our fire chief, and we have Larry Mwale, who's the director of our homeless response team. And we also have Ms. Judy Hutchinson, who works with Association of Faith Communities.
Thank you so much, Council Member. And also from the county, we have Dr. Ratner, as Supervisor Koenig said, and Dave Reed with Office of all the 3 R's: response, restoration, and resilience. Okay, and then Fire Marshal Nick Otis from UC Santa Cruz, who's dealing with the issues. Did I forget somebody? Yes, I did. Okay, so our next speaker is Chief from the fire department. Chief Odie has laryngitis, so Fire Marshal Shields will give the presentation for him, but he's valiant, he came anyway.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you everyone for coming. It's a little awkward for me up here as this morning he couldn't speak, and so now I'm giving his presentation. So if it goes poorly, it's his fault. If it goes great, thank you. Also, I'm a little bit of an introvert, so just bear with me. I just want to thank the council members for being here, Police Chief, Parks, and the county, as well as Nick Otis and Supervisor Koenig. I also want to give a shout out to the Santa Cruz City Firewise groups, Highland and Prospect Heights. They've done tremendous work in just a short 5 years, and I'd like to point out that the Prospect Heights group was the first recognized group within the county, so that's an amazing achievement. So I'll go ahead and get started with my presentation. I'm going to cover a lot of topics. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. If for some reason your question does not get answered and not answered later, feel free to reach out at us to either Chief Odie or I. Will be more than happy to answer your questions at a later time or date. So today, and there will be an exam at the end of this, so take notes. So really what I want to go over today, and I apologize again because this isn't my presentation, so I'm going to be glancing at my notes, is really the looking at the wildfire potential right now, currently in the city of Santa Cruz and county. Some prevention efforts that we've been really tackling recently. Then I really want to go into emergency preparation and evacuation information, which is really on the forefront of everyone's mind. Not only the De La Laveaga fire that happened a couple weeks ago, but as all we remember, yesterday was the 33rd anniversary of the earthquake, Loma Prieta. And just real quick, a show of hands, how many were here in Santa Cruz for that earthquake? So there was a lot of us here. Bernie and I were seniors in high school at that time. So these are actual photos from the De La Laveaga fire. This is actually a hotshot crew that got dropped off by that helicopter. The studs are all around who actually went in and were dropped off and fought the fire. Pretty amazing individuals there. So next slide. Yes, you have something else because he's my boss. So what we do is we gather a lot of data. We're data gatherers, data analysts, and we receive data from the national, I can never read this. Interagency Fire Center, I apologize. And so what they do is they compile data, look at fuel moistures, fire weather data, and come out with projected maps in terms of fire danger. So this is from October of 2021. This was last year. You see the red area where we're at a high potential for fire. But we fast forward 1 year, and we can see that we are no longer, we're normal. And we've all seen this, and everyone hates me, but this foggy weather, I love it. Every second of it, keep it foggy, keep it wet. So we can see that we're not in the same situation we were last year. We don't know where we're going to be next year because it's a constantly changing climate, and with climate change, who knows? But we constantly get this information, and that's what we base our decisions on in terms of how we operate, things we close, what we don't close. We look at the resiliency efforts that we've done in the last year. So we've treated 13 acres in the upper and lower Pogonip, upper and lower De La Laveaga Park. Thank you, Supervisor Conant, for pointing out the Vineyard Trail, which we created a shaded fuel break. We were able to get State Coastal Conservancy grant money to do that work. So what we do is create the shaded fuel break, which eliminates ladder fuels that allows it to get up into the canopy of the forest. So that's a very valuable tool for us, which will slow fire progress. We also did Arroyo Seco as well. So there's another canyon that we were able to do another shaded fuel break. We recently secured about $400,000 in federal funding for wildfire resiliency, really looking at purchasing equipment, wildfire risk management, as well as potentially creating seasonal wildland crew that will actually do the work. So that's something in the future that we'll be collaborating with parks in executing. We were also awarded 2 additional grants this year, one through the Coastal Conservancy again, so this is 2 years in a row we were awarded a grant from them. That one is for $220,000, where we'll be able to purchase equipment and do vegetation management within Pogonip and Arana Gulch, so 2 critical areas. We are also awarded $150,000 from CAL FIRE, where we'll look at doing work at Moore Creek Preserve as well as up the Highway 9 corridor. So again, critical areas. We totaled almost $1 million in federal and state grant money this year, so that's just an amazing achievement by our department, by the Parks Department, and we're just grateful to be able to secure these grants. So this year, what have we done? So we've gone out twice now, 2 separate times of the year, and we go out and assess the open spaces for people experiencing homelessness, and we just get an outreach and, excuse me, I'm gonna lose my train of thought, pardon me. So we go out and we contact individuals, see what's out there, and get an assessment earlier in the year, and then we just went out this last week, and we're gonna go out again tomorrow to see what's out there, what kind of ignition sources are out there. So we kind of get an idea of what's out there, and if something were to happen, how to approach it. So this next week, we're gonna go up into Poconos again and kind of do another walkthrough assessment. We are also working with a bunch of different agencies within the city, Public Works, Water Department, and Parks to develop a 5-year wildfire resiliency plan. And really what that is it's a long-range plan for the city to protect neighborhoods and critical infrastructure. So one of the things we realized during the CZU complex fire is we have critical infrastructure that we didn't really address in the past in terms of vegetation management. So during the incident, we were able to identify critical water infrastructure and do emergency vegetation management to be able to protect our water source. So from that, we are looking to develop a long-term plan where we can create basically a timeline in terms of frequency and places that we're going to conduct vegetation management, not only to create shaded fuel breaks, but to maintain fire department access so we can get into areas. So that's going to be a critical piece. We also received another grant to help us pay for that as well. So we're just busy writing grants every day. So we also partner with the 2 Firewise groups within the city. We just had an event last weekend. Was it already last weekend? Which was a great event. The Santa Cruz High Jazz Band was up there, and it was a great success. And we'll continue to monitor all the wildfire conditions within the city and surrounding areas as weather conditions change. We never know how the weather is going to change from month to month, from day to day, to week. So that's something we'll continue to do. So in the city-owned spaces, kind of went over a lot of this already, so I'll just kind of breeze through this. Really, we look to create the shaded fuel breaks, the emergency access, and the long-range planning in terms of all of our city resources. And that goes all the way up to the Newell watershed where the city water supply is as well. So it's not just in the city. A lot of the water facilities are in the county, and so we look outside of just city limits as well. We also are looking to build additional Firewise groups, and we're working with our existing ones to really do outreach to really incorporate every area of the city that's borders our wild and urban interface, such as the Western Drive neighborhood. Sorry, I'm not sweating up here. I told you I'm an introvert. It's all his fault. And really, the Firewise group, they're here. They can answer questions for you. It's a group that really was born out of wildfire safeness, that's not a word, wildfire resiliency, and they're volunteer groups. They're sponsored by fire departments. It takes a lot of effort, so if anyone's interested in being part of that, reach out. It's an amazing organization, and they do a lot of good work within the city. Next, what I really want to talk about, which is, I think, again, something that is in the forefront of our mind, not only from the wildfire in Laveaga, but also with the anniversary of the earthquake, is emergency preparedness. So we really need to think about preparing for every type of emergency, not just wildfire, earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, everything. So when we talk emergency planning, we're not talking of one type of emergency. We're talking about all emergencies. And so things that we can do to plan ahead is, join a Firewise group. And the great thing about Firewise group is your community. So you're connecting with neighbors, you're commuting, you're creating call trees. So if there is an emergency, that you know who to get a hold of and who needs help. Join a local CERT group. I believe there's a CERT representative here too. Community Emergency Response Team. They were critical for us to help outreach during the CZU complex, to do outreach and advise neighbors of what they can do to prepare for the wildfire. The next really important thing for all of you, especially with the landlines kind of going away, cell phones, is sign up for Code Red. And Code Red is a phone emergency alert system, so if there's an evacuation, Netcom will call you on your phone, whether it be a landline or cell phone, to alert you that there's a shelter in place, if there's evacuation happening. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go into the next topic, is Zone Haven. So Zone Haven is actually something that during the CCU complex, our chief saw this platform and we used it as a beta tester. And we really liked it because it was a very intuitive, real-time assessment of evacuations. And so every area is broken up into grids, and we can evacuate areas by just touching on a map. It'll highlight the map, and then we can notify that on the website. Netcom gets that information, and then we'll send out the code red alert for evacuations. And we'll kind of show that a little bit, and it's really great. There's a community access site where you can actually see what's going on, so it's actually very handy. It's instantaneously updated, so it's pretty cool. And then develop evacuation plans. So that's something that we brought preparedness flyers back there that we will, there'll be slides for it, but they're in the back. These are critical. I say if you take anything from this, take one of those flyers because it has everything you need. You can take multiple because it's really what you need to prepare for an emergency. You know, it emphasizes things, developing a family communication plan, single point of contact if there's even a fire in your house. Also, like I said, in terms of your neighbors, getting a kind of a group together in your neighborhood, a call tree so you know all your neighbors are safe. Evaluating your home for potential hazards and where your utilities are, it's always helpful. Creating a go bag so you know what to take, medications, cell phone chargers, batteries, things like that, so you're not scrambling last minute to grab important pictures, my cell phone, my dog, you know exactly what to take.
This one's a big one here, because when we talk about evacuation, everyone says, what if power's out? What if cell phones are down? Having a radio, it's not gonna help, but. That doesn't work.
That's it. So it's really important to have an AM FM radio. Like I spoke in terms of when the earthquake happened, my family had an AM FM radio, and that's the only way we got information was from the radio.
KSCO, KPIG.
Yep, and that's really such a vital piece of equipment to have and batteries to charge them. So here's our emergency preparedness flyers. Again, please grab one. We have them in English and we have them in Spanish. I won't really dwell on it, but there's a lot of great information on these in terms of how to prepare. Next. Oh no. Okay, so code red. We do have cards back there with the QR code. You can get to the site, sign up for code red. All of you should
Please sign up for it.
please. It's critical in terms of how to prepare for an emergency. And so the last piece is zone haven. And this is what we will use to identify evacuation areas. And so if there is a major incident happening, we can select a zone.
Dangerous technology.
I didn't do it, he did it.
We both did it now. No, that one. There we go.
So this is a public site, and it's community.zonehaven.com. And there is actually code red. There's a link on our website. We're going to be putting a link from our City of Santa Cruz Fire Department website, and it shows the map of the city, and it's broken up into zones, and you can click on the zones. This is our zone right there. Go ahead and click on it. And it'll show specific details in terms of what is happening. Well, if there's an incident, I actually have it up on my iPad. All of our command staff have access to this. It's in their rigs. PD will have access, and I can literally click on a zone. And obviously, connection. And then I can change the status of that zone to say evacuate, shelter in place, or whatever the emergency may be. And let's see if I can do this. And the other thing is this is actually live, so if I do some things that freak people out like
The school address. What's the school address?
Oh, what school is that?
This, what's the address?
1445 Morrissey.
lucky I got through almost all of this, only making like 6 mistakes. So go ahead and refresh.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And so I just changed that here. It immediately, so if it's evacuate, it'll immediately come up. You can check that. Netcom gets this. They'll see that this area is zoned for evacuation. They'll start code red to send out immediate notifications for evacuation. We can split zones. We can do multiple zones. We can use this to repopulate as well. So repopulate and click on a zone. So it's such an amazing tool. It's something that we're really getting to know now, and so it'll be implemented over the next year probably. But hopefully it'll be in place soon, and then we're working on a more automated system with Netcom. So it'll, once we do it, it'll automatically initiate the call out. So it's an amazing tool. Go to that site, check it out on your own. It's pretty cool. And I'm sure you guys have tons of questions, and are you guys ready for your test?
Thank you so much, Fire Marshal Shields, Chief Odie. We really appreciate it. I neglected to mention Larry Imwali, who's here as part of our team from Office of Homelessness Response. So, our next presenter will be Chief Bernie Escalante, and helping us understand how he connects with fire and parks and all these other things to keep us safe and what we can do.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming and having us all here, and hopefully we could provide some good information for you, and certainly available afterwards or you know, by email or by phone to answer any other questions that we don't get to tonight. So just to dovetail off of the Zone Haven presentation, I'm super excited to, you know, see our organization and the fire department collaborating on this piece of new equipment. We are in the midst of getting all of our staff trained. And you know, with the latest Laveaga fire, I think Chief Odie and I, we've had some great conversations about some of the great things that took place during that event, but also a lot of learning lessons. And you know, these events are, I usually describe them as controlled chaos. There's a lot of emotion from a lot of folks, and we understand that. And so we walked away with a lot of really good lessons that we learned individually as different organizations. But we did a lot of great work that day in working together. And one of the things that came out of that was moving towards this program here to really help us communicate more thoroughly and efficiently with the community and allow the firefighters and the police officers to do, you know, their jobs individually and collectively to keep the community safe. So this program is going to be, I think, a huge improvement for us as a community, and as we continue to get all of our staff trained up on it, I think you'll see the benefits from it, and you really need to take a look at it when you get a chance on the community platform and learn and see some of the things the information that will become available to you. As you know, we're working our way through the benchlands closure, and I know it's one of the hottest topics in our community, and that's encampments and how the encampments cause significant concern related to fires. Things are progressing really well. We've made a lot of progress. I think we're turning the corner towards the finish line. We probably should have that cleared out probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks. But what you are seeing probably are the side effects to that closure. And now the work really begins for us to continue to work. We already do a lot of work, but we're going to have a lot of work ahead of us to continue to move forward in identifying the most the most risky locations, especially related to fire, But there's a lot of locations in our community that are being negatively affected by the spillover of the folks that choose not to take the shelter that's offered to them. And we also have a lot of legal challenges that we have to comply with. But I could tell you that there's a lot of work every single day in all departments within the city and departments within the county. I have seen in the last probably 6 to 12 months so much more coordination and collaboration with the county and county resources, and how we're working so much more effectively together. I want to thank the county and commend the county for coming forward and really helping us through some of the challenges in the benchlands. We currently have an encampment team that consists of a member, at least one member from every department within the city. Larry and Wally might touch on it, but he kind of leads that group. It consists of community service officers from my department, police officers from my department, members from the fire department, members from Parks and Rec, members from Public Works, because it's not just going in and telling somebody to leave. There's a legal process that we have to follow. We have to notify them. We have to eventually abate them. We try to direct them to resources. We understand that criminalizing them is not the answer, but ultimately, if that's the way we have to go that direction. But there's a lot of work with the encampment team that's going on, and they meet every single week. And they get information from the CRISP app, they get information from emails that we receive from the community, phone calls from the community, and they sit there and they prioritize how can we best address these issues with the staff and the resources that we have. We certainly can't be at all places at all times, and we really do our best with the resources that we have. And unfortunately, right now, a lot of our resources are deployed into the benchlands. And really it becomes sometimes us being able to live within our means in our community with the resources that we have. And we just can't get on every single complaint right away, but we do our best. And there's a lot of great work that happens every week on that encampment team. The hope is as the benchlands is cleared, that more resources will be available to start addressing in a more timely manner some of these encampments that pop up. I have to say, I've been with the police department for 27 years now, and this is the first time that I can say with confidence that our community, our city has a plan. It will not resolve itself overnight. I've spent 27 years moving homeless encampments and citing people that are in homeless encampments. And you can see now that doesn't work. It is a tool, but it is not the only tool. And so I'm not quite sure, but Larry might touch on a lot of the infrastructure that is being discussed and in motion, whether it's in the planning department and additional shelters that are being placed. Supervisor Koenig also talked about the efforts that the county's making, which we much appreciate. So there's a lot of progress that has been made, but we've seen this issue evolve, and I've seen it evolve over the last 27 years, and it's not going to be resolved in, overnight or in the 5 minutes that I'm up here. My time is up, but I wanted to wrap up one last thing. It's really important to have a community like this involved. And I ask for you to pay attention at the state level to the legislation that's going on every single day, right in front of our faces, but you don't know about it. There's a lot of significant legislative challenges that bills that are being passed that create a lot of challenges for us as far as the police department and enforcement and consequences and accountability that a lot of people are not aware of. So I ask for you to stay involved and get involved if you're not already, and pay attention to those issues at the state level. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you so much, Chief. It really helps us to have all these multiple perspectives. I wanted to mention that we have index cards and we have questions. We want you to come with your questions. We'll be passing baskets through the rows, and please put your questions so that we can compile them and ask the rest of our wonderful panel during the question and answer period. This is your important time to give your feedback and help us find solutions. Our next presenter is Larry Imwali, who's the Director of the City Office of Homelessness Response. Thank you so much, Larry.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the invitation to be here. And I am going to improvise a little bit because Chief Escalante actually kind of did touch upon a lot of, oops, do I need to get this up there? I can hear it now. I'm not that much taller than the Chief. Anyway, good evening. Thanks for the invitation to be here. And Chief Escalante did touch upon a number of the elements that I was going to talk about as well, but I'll highlight a couple of different things in the interest of time. But he gave a good framework in terms of the city's multi-department, every department role in addressing homelessness in our community and addressing encampments and the resources we deploy to manage that on a daily and weekly basis. I want to touch upon the shelter programs that we have in De Laveaga Park that the city is operating. Then I want to talk about, as part of our 3-year homelessness response action plan, the sort of new capacities that we have coming online and how we're going to work with persons experiencing homelessness encampments in our community. And then a part of that is our outreach and working on cleaning up and mitigating encampments, but then the other is working on a continue to expand shelter. The solution to homelessness is housing, and so we're a partner in that process, and this is really, I think, intersects in the new collaboration we have going on with the county to work towards that goal. So first, in De Laveaga Park, the city is operating a safe sleeping program for the capacity of 135 persons. Presently, we have just over 100 persons in that program right now. It is operated by the Salvation Army, who's been operating shelter programs up there for over 2 years now, continuously. It started as part of COVID. So they continue to be the operator, but now the city is resourcing those programs instead of the county. So we have a 75 tent program on the back lawn of the Armory, which is actually now, it's not lawn, but a gravel base. And then we just recently opened inside the building a 65 tent program inside the Armory building. And in connection with fire safety, one of the parts of that process as we were opening these programs is working with fire and CAL FIRE on essentially signing off on a site plan for fire safety in that process. And Tim Shields was involved in that, and he coordinated with CAL FIRE, since it is on state property technically, so they were involved as well. And some of the key issues were really about vegetation management around the perimeter on the site, and then also making sure that there is separation between the tents to mitigate the potential for combustibles to take hold and spread. So fire safety is part of the program, the core, the foundation of when we set up these programs. That is always on our minds, given the number of people that are up there. In addition to the shelter program, we also have a safe parking program in the front parking lot at the Armory building. Right now, the capacity is 15 vehicles that are up there 24/7. That program is staffed full-time, not 24/7, but it is staffed full-time, 40 hours a week with case management staff, a program manager that works with each individual clients there. On the property overall, there is, through the Salvation Army staff, somebody on site 24/7. It is staffed with multiple people. So those are the programs that we have up at the Armory. Those are programs. We also bring in supportive services, Homeless Persons Health Project comes on site twice a month. We've got connections with behavioral health, continuing to work with persons enrolled in those programs to get on a pathway and successfully move into housing. I have 1 minute left. What I want to talk about quickly is just building upon Chief Escalante talking about our encampment assessment team. Again, a lot of our focus right now is on bench lands, but as we move past that and enclosed bench lands, we'll be focusing our energy on more regular management of encampments across the community. You heard about the mechanisms to provide feedback. We're collecting information. We're discussing that weekly and prioritizing. Some new capacities we'll have coming online this fall is we're standing up a new field division of 4 persons that will work with our 3-person outreach team to work and engage persons in encampments. We want to take a service-oriented approach first. Chief Escalante talked about some of the processes involved, but we really want to lead and connect people with services to the extent possible, look for other options through this process. So we've got some new resources coming online to be able to work. We still have every department involved in the process, but this will be a new group of 4 persons that are dedicated to doing this work specifically. And again, and I suspect that maybe Robert will talk about this a little bit from the county perspective, but again, we continue to work on trying to expand shelter options, permanent housing options in our community, and working in partnership with the county and other jurisdictions and community groups to try to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Armani. I want to do a little switch in the program now. Tony Elliott, we didn't, for some reason, my finger slipped when I was supposed to put you in the program, and I really apologize. So if you could speak now, this is Director of Parks and Recreation for the city, with apologies for my typos.
Thank you, Abby. I can be long-winded, so I suspect I was cut for time, which is thanks for the opportunity to meet with you all. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for the city. My name is Tony Elliott. I'll be very brief here so that we can keep working through the program and make sure to answer questions that you all have and have a good discussion here this evening. So just by way of scope, City Parks and Recreation, we manage, maintain, and operate about 1,700 acres of land in Santa Cruz. So that's 50 park properties, 32 of which are neighborhood parks, but a lot of the acreage there is built into our open spaces. So places like De Laveaga, Pogonip, Arana Gulch, Moore Creek, so on and so forth. So we manage a lot of these properties. A lot of what we do, the partnership, is really built with fire and police, as you've heard this evening. So I won't go over those details again, but a lot of the work we do with respect to wildfire mitigation, resiliency is a lot of what Tim and Chief Odie covered here this evening. So something as simple as mowing can be a deterrent to wildfire. Those shaded fuel breaks that we talked about, that vegetation management, trails maintenance, is all geared toward wildfire prevention. So a very close partnership with fire, with police, with Larry and his team, with the county. We know that there's not a wall around Santa Cruz, so in Parks and Recreation, we really prioritize partnering with our other partner agencies in the area. So state parks, obviously we share borders and nearby parks with state parks. The same is true with county parks. So really collaborative efforts there with state parks and county. A lot of the work we do is also built around partnerships. So just here at De La Viega Park, behind the school, many partners just in this one park. So we've got a golf course operator up here, Tim and Jamie Laustalot, running the business side of the golf course. We've got the Santa Cruz Disc Golf Club, which is a very famous, world-renowned club up there, and they do a lot of maintenance on site. We work with the Santa Cruz Mountain Trail Stewardship. They do virtually 100% of our trail maintenance here in De La Viega and throughout the park system. Many, many other partners in here as well. The Firewise group, we've got Santa Cruz Shakespeare, we've got Santa Cruz Archers, many, many partners. So we are really, in Parks and Recreation, not a siloed shop. It's critical that we partner with PD, with fire, with these community groups, and with neighbors as well. So appreciate this opportunity to connect with you all, and that's really at the core, I think, of our success, that communication that we talked about. On the recreation side of the house, we've got parks and recreation. And the recreation side of the house is how we activate these spaces. So just with parks, if they're just open and not a whole lot of activity happening, we can see some of that negative activity that pops up. And so a lot of what we do is we try to activate these spaces. We try to really make them engaging. We try to really build equity into the services that we provide and the programs that we provide in Parks and Recreation. So an example of that is Grant Park, the neighborhood Grant Park. A few years ago, those neighbors came to us. We had some challenges over at that park, and those neighbors said, close it down. We want you to, the fence was up, they said, close the park down. We said, well, give us a shot to activate it. We brought in a pump track, we engaged the neighbors. There was a Friends of Grant Park that formed, and huge credit and kudos to them. Fast forward 2 years, the park is still open, and the neighbors are concerned for a different reason, and that's that the park is too busy. It's too loud, it's too vibrant, there's too much stuff going on. And so when we activate these spaces, this is the balance of parks and recreation. When we can get groups out hiking, we do a walking adventure group with some of our seniors through the senior center, through the London Nelson Community Center. So the more we can activate these spaces through programming, through sports, the better served we are in using parks for how they're intended to be used. So happy to answer questions. I'll leave it at that, but it's a bit of a snapshot in terms of Parks and Recreation. And again, just appreciate the partnership and engagement with you all as neighbors and community members. So encourage that to keep going. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony, for being gracious about my slip. Just a quick one. Firewise Group here is also planning, we have a partnership with Parks and Rec to do a little parklet restoration project in Laveaga. And if you're interested, Catherine Lee here is taking the lead on that, and we will tell you more via email. Next, I'm going to do a slight switch in program just so we can continue the question about homelessness response. And so if Dr. Ratner could come and give us your point of view, what's going on, what we need to do better.
Thank you everyone for the coming out tonight and the invitation to be part of the community conversation. And I have trouble being brief, but I'm got a timekeeper back there to keep me in check, and I want to make sure we have time in the agenda to answer questions. So I'm Robert Ratner. I work for the County of Santa Cruz in our Human Services Department. And I've worked here just a little over, actually almost 2 years. So in November of 2020, the county formed a new division in the Human Services Department called the Housing for Health Division. And we were created because the county leadership, some of the folks here today, said the county needs to step up and do more on the issue of housing and homelessness, and decided they needed to embed the effort within a larger county department where there would be additional resources. And I work in human services. We partner heavily with health and community development infrastructure and other members of the county family to work on the issue of homelessness. A few things that we do in our division that I wanted to share with you and give some examples of our partnership with the city. We, like the fire department, go after federal and state grants as much as possible because there's not enough money here locally to address the needs that we have in the community. One example of a grant we worked on with our colleagues in the city is an encampment response proposal. So this was state funding that we worked on a joint application with the city related to the benchlands to bring in some money to add services and funding to help people who've been unhoused get into housing. And we're doing a lot more of that now because I think culture change, both at the county level and the city level. We're really trying to figure out how do we work together. And when we work together, folks at the federal and state level say, hey, they're actually working together. We should give them more money because they're working as a team. So I'm excited to be a part of that effort. Putting this process of raising funding in context, we have 40 grants that we manage. And this is a reflection of how our society, both at all levels of government, addresses homelessness. We throw money at little ideas and populations, and we do it for a year of this, 2 years of that. And it's our team that tries to figure out, okay, how do we knit this together to actually have a system that is gonna last and support people over the long haul? So one of our biggest challenges is figuring out how do we go after money, spread it out over time, and make it really impactful. I think there's been a tendency here and around the state to go after quick fixes to homelessness, and a lot of the other speakers have talked about this problem's been here for 40 to 50 years. I can go on and on about how we got here. I'll mention the four big reasons why I think we're here. But it's going to take thoughtful, planful, consistent effort and partnerships for us to make progress on the issue. Part of that is using data. We help sponsor a count of people experiencing homelessness in the community. The federal government requires us to do it every 2 years. We made a decision to try to do that every year so we can get a better handle of the progress we're making. Many folks who are part of the panel today have been helping us improve our data collection. So the city staff have done an amazing job with the benchlands. We have a data system called the Homeless, I hate the name, Homeless Management Information System. But we have an outreach module, and city staff are helping us to better track where encampments are and how do we get our services to go out where the encampments are. We have a governance structure. Supervisor Koenig mentioned this. So at the local level, the federal government expects we form something called the continuum of care, and the federal government looks for us as partners and community members to come together to address the issue of homelessness. Many of the people here are on our policy board or operations committee, and there's opportunities for people in the public to get involved. And most of what we do, we contract out with nonprofit providers like Association for Faith Communities, Salvation Army, and our community-based organization partners are really critical to the whole effort. We have a small team of social workers that are helping folks who were in COVID hotels get on past to permanent housing. I alluded to the fact that I want to talk a little bit about why I think we have homelessness. We have a plan that we're working from called the Housing for a Healthy Santa Cruz framework. It's available online at our website, housingforhealthpartnership.org. 4 big reasons why I think we have homelessness, not just here, but around the country. Number 1, lack of affordable housing. Cost of housing doesn't match incomes. If some of you have heard in the news, we're the most expensive, by one measure, rental market in the country. So it shouldn't surprise us that people who live here have a hard time affording to stay in rental housing. That's based on the average incomes and the cost of housing here. Number 2, health issues, whether it's through aging processes or just health challenges. You have to have a lot of abilities from a functional standpoint to be able to keep your housing. And I see the 1 minute. Problems of the brain are one of the biggest contributors to why people are unable to keep housing. So mental health, substance use issues, dementia, head trauma. So we don't do a good job, I'm trained in medicine, of helping people who have behavior-related issues due to neurological problems. So we have work to do in the health space. Connections. One of the consequences of losing a home, and one of the reasons why people lose homes, is because they lose connections with supportive, helpful people. All of you can be a part of that process of helping people reconnect. The 4th thing I'll say, and probably end with this, because I only have that minute left, is hope. We have to have, at the individual level, for people who are unhoused, you can lose hope that there's a better way of being and living. And I think folks have talked to the fact that people don't always take what's offered to them. If you've been offered something and it didn't work and it didn't work and it didn't work, you start to lose hope. And you often need a program like Healing the Streets. There's a flyer over there with our behavioral health department where they're doing consistent follow-up and outreach to encourage people to regain a sense of hope and purpose. But we also need it collectively. The problem is really challenging, but it didn't used to exist to the degree it does. And there are federal and state and local policies that have contributed to our current situation. So we all have to keep hope that if we work together more effectively, we can make progress on this issue, reduce fire risk, help make sure everyone has a safe and healthy place to live. All right, I'm gonna stop.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ratner. I think I'm going to shift a little bit in the program as well because Judy Hutchison is president of the Association of Faith Communities, and she is coming at it from the nonprofit community agency that's also dealing with this important issue. So we really welcome having city, county, and community input.
Thank you, Abby, for inviting me and the Association of Faith Communities to have a few minutes to tell you about what we're trying to do to alleviate homelessness in our community. The Association of Faith Communities was developed over the last 10 years. We have several programs that we run with the county and city's help over the years. I think we're doing a pretty good job. We run the Faith Community Shelter. Currently, we shelter 20 people. Those 20 people are vetted. They have an application process to get into our shelter. They are assigned case management, and they usually find housing with voucher help, I have to add that caveat, within 6 months. And since the 2022 period, we have had a 70% success rate. So I'm really proud of the people that work for us. We also do safe spaces. That is a parking program. They're in various churches all over the county. That current group has a case manager also, and in 2022 they have a 50% success rate. And incidentally, we also run a shower trailer all around town to give people a shower. So what the board has been working on in the last 2 years is developing a village concept that we can add to our programs. And I call it a village rather than an encampment because everybody thinks benchlands when they think encampment, and that's not what we have in mind at all. What we would like to do is offer a 30 to 40 people encampment village to be placed within neighborhood groups like this one. And what would be a part of this is a fenced, probably, we haven't gotten this far, but probably homes, those little tiny home kind of things. And in addition to that, they would have a community center, would have case management, would have all the same entities and things that we have with our shelter project. Currently, we have one in process with the county. We're very excited about that. And we really want this to be a pilot program so that this concept can be accepted and worked on within Santa Cruz County itself. Have lots of little ones around rather than having this ugly benchland things. So what I'd like to do is propose to you is for this group, this working group, to consider having one in your neighborhood. Believe it or not, we have a site that has been accepted by the owner to do this, but we can't do it that way. We have to have neighborhood approval to do anything like this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Judy. That's a really exciting new idea. We will finish this section, the presenter section, with a presentation by Dave Reed, director of the 3 Rs, the famous Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience. Please complete any questions you have, because we will have the question period afterward. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep this really brief. I'm going to just give you a few pieces of information across all 3 of those Rs. So as the director of the Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience, my role is the emergency manager for the county, supporting the operational areas and engaging with all of our community partners. But in terms of the 3 Rs, the things that I want you to take home tonight, the first one under the response. In addition to the great communication information that was shared by the fire chief, and the fire marshal around Code Red and Zone Haven, they also mentioned the radio. So one of the other things that we're doing to add as another communication tool is the NOAA weather radio system. And those NOAA weather radios, we will be able to use those to broadcast, particularly during outages. So if there's a public safety power shutoff or other circumstances where power is out for a prolonged period of time, we're going to use those NOAA weather radios as another communication tool for you. So I want to recommend for folks that don't have one of those, they can also dual purpose and listen to traditional FM and AM radio stations, but also they will receive those NOAA weather alerts. So we're going to be using those. So that's under the response side. On the recovery side, I want to share with you that from the fire recovery standpoint for CZU, the 900 plus homes and community members that lost their homes were chronically underinsured. So on average, it's costing north of $600 a square foot to rebuild their homes, and on average, they were insured between $250 and $350. So I want you to go and check in with your insurance provider, see if there's anything you can do to increase your coverage, but just want to share that piece. The third piece under the resilience side, so the resilience for us at the county is around climate change. Climate change is here. It's happening. It's now, right? Last year, most of our rain happened in 2 days, one day in October, one day in December. In 2017, we had over $100 million in storm damage from an atmospheric river event, and obviously in 2020, we had the fire. So the resilience side for me is around climate change, and one of the things that's most important right now, and it was touched on a little bit about here today to remind you about, is that the city and the county, based on state law, have to update their housing elements next year. The housing element is dictated by the state, and there's something called the RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. So the city of Santa Cruz, the county of Santa Cruz, all of the cities need to build housing. So often in our community, we fight around high density and affordable housing. And high density, affordable housing in our urban environment that is all electric is probably the single greatest tool we have to combat climate change, because over 60% of our greenhouse gas emissions is from single occupancy personal vehicles. So the more we can do to create communities that are walkable, bikeable, safe routes to schools, all of those things will help us combat climate change. So as we enter that process, that housing element process at the county and the city, I encourage you to think of that through the lens of climate change and to encourage those efforts to concentrate our affordable housing along transit corridors in our downtown core in the city. And those efforts, rather than fighting around the housing element or the housing update or how much density should be there, think about the effects of climate change that are going on now. And I want to encourage you to support those efforts that the city and the county will be undertaking. So with that, the last thing I will say is that there was a lot of talk about grants. And I always try and take a moment, and as Supervisor Koenig mentioned, I used to be in the supervisor's office. I want to remind people why we need grants. And the important thing about grants for us is that the structural inequities that were created in 1978 with Measure J meant that the state takes 84 cents of every property tax dollar you pay. So the city of Santa Cruz, the county of Santa Cruz, we are working with a fraction of the property tax dollars that you pay to provide all of the critical services that you heard about here tonight. So we need the state and federal dollars to supplement because of that structural inequity. So it's not that we don't want to do the most we can with the property tax dollars you pay, but so often community members say, I pay my tax dollars, why aren't you doing more around homelessness? Why aren't you doing more around fire resilience? Why aren't you doing more around climate change? And it's because of that structural inequity from 1978. So I just want to remind you that we're trying to get as many grant dollars in because we need to do more work. We recognize that, and we need your support in that. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've heard 8 presentations from our wonderful group of presenters, and I really thank each one of you for time and overview. And now we have some time for questions, and I'm hoping we'll be able to ask our city council members and UC Fire Marshal Otis and those others who were not speaking as presenters to respond. So Adam Bender will be moderating the questions, and we have some from all from your audience. If your question is not answered tonight, because we're running out of time, we are going to have a follow-up where they will be compiled, sorted, sent out to agencies, answers responded, and put online. And Angela Stanford will tell you about that later. So don't be frustrated. It's a big question. We're just taking the first step today. Okay, this is Adam Bender who will moderate the, where'd you go, Adam?
Oh, I'm right here. I never went anywhere.
He will moderate the questions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam. Those of you sitting behind tables, you're now in the hot seat. We have a lot of you. We have some good questions. So I know you're all very good at talking, but let's try to keep it concise so we can hear from multiple parties. We have a mic that's going to get passed around, so when you feel like you want to respond to something, just raise your hand Dagmar will run the mic over to you and you can have your chance to say it. All right. Let's see. We're supposed to have about 30 minutes for questions, but we might go a little long. We'll see how this goes. Oh, sure. I should mention that. I'm from the Highland Firewise group, not the Prospect group. We're the goat people. So if you knew about the goats that came into town last year to clean up the Evergreen Cemetery, that was us. That's our thing. If you want to know about goats, I can tell you a lot, unfortunately. All right, first question. What's the plan for evacuating the people at the armory, tents, and oversized vehicles in case of a fire?
Good question.
What's the plan for evacuating people at the armory, tents, and oversized vehicles in case of a fire? And please, if you would, just introduce yourself one more time in case people missed you when you were speaking originally.
Robert, are you ready to take this?
I saved them for this question.
For example, I'm going to give people space. During De Laveaga, I was in contact with the armory staff and city staff that were on site, utilizing the intel that we had at the command post to shelter in place. Now, the same type of information that we would provide on Zone Haven, shelter in place, evacuate, whether it's an order or a recommendation or a warning. In the case of, I've got a lot of questions about the RVs. This goes for residents as well as the unhoused. We don't need RVs unless that's your plan to clog up roads, because not only does it prevent you all from getting out, it prevents us from getting in. One question we had with a group on North Rodeo Gulch was they had 300 homes, but the organizer said, we have 600 cars going out. I said, time out. That's way too many vehicles. Your plan needs to be a lot more refined and efficient. We don't need to take every car that we own. So we're going to apply that same principle to the armory. Does that answer it? So we're not going to use all the vehicles. We're going to shuttle them down just like they do now. They're not allowed to go up and down the hill. So it's going to maintain the open road for access for us and for residents in the Old Pilkington Road area.
And you have a fire road too. Fire roads. You have fire roads as well.
Yes. But for the De Laveaga fire, our primary access was Upper Park Road and the helicopters.
Helicopters have a way of getting around most things. All right, next question.
That's it, he's done.
Okay. Unfortunately, it is another fire question, maybe. We'll see how. With the reduced inmate crews, what would it take to create a fire corps that could provide jobs, housing for homeless that would be interested and able?
Okay, so part of the federal funding we received is really, some of it will be seed money to actually create a jobs program. So we're working with Parks Department to really look at what it would take to create, we don't even know what it looks like yet, but a program where vegetation management was the goal, and we would hire either seasonal workers who are interested in getting in the fire service and get experience to get into that, or people experiencing homelessness and who want to get out there and do some work and get paid. So that's something actually we have received federal, or we will receive federal money from, and we'll be working directly with Parks to kind of engage that program.
That's how much of that money?
So we were awarded $400,000, and like I said, it's seed money. Some of that money will be used for equipment. We're looking at getting a smaller, like a type, they're called type 6, type 7 pickup with water on it. We'll use it to tow a chipper that we got grant money for, to be able to get around, and if there's like a little grass fire, we can use that vehicle. But Santa Clara has a similar program right now where it's actually typed. So that means if there's an incident anywhere in the state, they can get activated and go out and actually work an actual wildfire event. We probably won't get there, but it's in the initiating stages, so we don't quite have all the answers yet, but that's something that's on our books. We're very excited about it, by the way.
Thank you, Tim.
Who wanted to ask it?
Over there.
Okay, Dave.
Real quick, there's a distinction with merit that I just want to make a point of. So the crews that the fire marshal is talking about is for hazardous fuel reduction versus wild and fire crews. And so that training is much more involved, and unlikely that those types of crews would be developed out of like local citizens. I know that the community of Bonnie Doon would like to see that. But once you have that training, you need to have a battalion chief or a chief in charge of that group. So I know that there's been a lot of community conversation about, we want to become firefighters and fight the fire when it's here. And there's a distinction that's important, that the crew that he's talking about is really about reducing that hazard, which is critical and important. So I just wanted to make that distinction, that it's much more difficult to get to that other side, the wildland fires fighting crew side.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. All right. Next question, one near and dear to my heart. So the question was written, Prospect Heights has many evacuation bottlenecks, especially Brookwood and Prospect Heights. This is also true on the Highland side of the world. We don't have a lot of ways to get down. We also have a very large university just above us. So what can be done to increase egress access in the case of an emergency? I'll take answers for either side, Prospect Heights or the university side. Either one's good with me.
Nick, have something to say about that?
Hi everybody, Nick Otis with UC Santa Cruz. We just recently updated our campus-wide evacuation planning and processes for such an evacuation. One of the things that's really important to know is that during a large-scale evacuation is that the campus population would have a very significant impact on some of the other evacuation centers. So some of the thought process of our campus evacuation is that we would have dedicated evacuation zones that are independent of the city and county-wide evacuation zones. And what we'd be doing is we'd be planning and shuttling people off campus to these evacuation zones that would essentially serve as distribution centers, so we could get people on the other side of the hill and then find housing and lodging for our students outside of county limits to decrease the impact that could be happening within the campus. And those evacuation zones are identified with some of our other unique properties that fall under my jurisdiction. So that's like 2300 Delaware, that's our coastal side campus, and then a couple other locations such as that. So that's one of the things that's put in a lot of thought for our planning.
Excuse me, could you answer the question about Prospect Heights?
Yeah.
The question about Prospect Heights. Tim, you're...
So I'll touch on a little bit of that, and I'll have Chief Escalante kind of finish it off. So because the actual function of the evacuation is handled by law enforcement, not fire. But again, I want to talk about Zone Haven, and I really should have bought stock of the company because anyway, so one of the things that like I showed you before, we can phase evacuations out. So it's not we're dumping entire neighborhoods out at the same time. So when like CZU was coming, it wasn't an immediate everyone needs to go. We phase the evacuation. We can split zones, so we're not creating the bottlenecks. The other thing we can do in Zone Haven is create evacuation routes, and we're going to be working on that with the county. We're going to be working on that with the PD in terms of creating the evacuation routes in evacuation centers. So they'll be identified on Zone Haven specifically. And I'll turn it over to Chief Escalante to talk about actual evacuations.
Well, he kind of covered it, but a lot of it is going to be, I guess, predetermined in Zone Haven, where you'll see the options depending on the circumstances. And a lot of those options are for us to pick depending on exactly where the fire is, what the conditions are, and which way it's moving. So it really is a team effort of working off of Zone Haven side by side, them communicating with us and sort of directing which neighborhoods we should touch first to prevent the bottleneck issue. But again, a lot of it comes down to your pre-planning of what you're going to take. You're not going to take all 3 vehicles. You're going to take your entire house. You have to be a little more efficient than that to help us out.
All right. So this next question I'm going to point directly at our friends from the city. Hi all. We've heard a lot of stuff this evening. It's clearly a very complicated problem. But one thing it seems to have in common is it all intersects here in the city of Santa Cruz. So I would really love if you could share some of your perspectives on what we've heard tonight and maybe how you think about these issues: homelessness, fire safety, emergency preparation.
I'm on the hot seat. Yeah, thank you for having us tonight, and thank you all for coming out. It's really great to see so many people out tonight, because this is a very important conversation. And I just do want to remind everybody that the CZU complex fire started with that very beautiful but very, very damaging lightning storm. And so we also need to realize that nature is working against us, whether it's climate change, extreme heat events like we had at the end of, during the Labor Day weekend. So we're faced with a variety of different factors, and I think that's the hard part about figuring out what to do and what to put our limited resources into. And so, in our seats, we're trying to work with very capable departments, people who really are excelling in the work that they're doing in a very difficult environment, in a very small town with not a lot of revenue sources. And so with really problems that are usually faced in much larger cities. And so I think what we've done is to try to break down programmatically and begin action and evaluation of whether that action is actually working. And that's the work we're starting with, is homelessness, which includes ordinances and other ways that we're looking at that specific policy question, but also the action that we can take as a city. But that has to be done in an evaluative process constantly. Are we finding populations that are agreeing to take shelter? Why not? Understanding the population and really getting the data that helps us really understand people who are here, what are they faced with, all of those things. If we don't have that, which we've never really collected before, we just kept moving people around, that is systematically the way that we're now starting to do this work. And that's really we really started that just a year ago. So we're into a much more diagnostically, focused way to deal with some of these problems. And then, I think that there's enormous, and I worked with my colleagues last year, we passed a green jobs resolution in the city, because there's enormous potential for, our kids, a lot of the families that live here, to actually maintain the landscape around Santa Cruz County. 50% of the land in Santa Cruz County is actually open space. So when you think about adding up all of the parks, all of the open spaces, all the county parks, 50% of our land area is actually open space. That means we're surrounded by either the most beautiful thing in the world or the most terrifying thing in the world, okay? So it's very hard for a small county like us to really acknowledge that we have immense amounts of land that are preserved forever because of the biotic and ecological resources. But we, as stewards of this particular county, have to start acknowledging that. Those places do not stay safe on their own. They are enormously expensive to manage, but we have great opportunity. We have an amazing university, we have an amazing community college. We could build one of the first communities that takes environmental stewardship to a whole different level, providing jobs, providing opportunities, maybe even training people out of homelessness. So there's enormous opportunities if we sort of put on our thinking caps and we acknowledge that we live in the most beautiful place in the world, but because the world is changing, it can become a very dangerous place. And so, we have to think that way from here on out, and we have to know that we're doing diagnostic work to deal with or to acknowledge and address some of the folks who are unfortunately finding the place where they are. But, I'm personally very invested in the accountability component to the homelessness problem. We have to understand and have accountable and measurable objectives before we can really help folks who need help. So that's kind of some of my thoughts tonight to share with you.
Well, Donna, you're a tough act to follow. So my name's Martine, and I'm actually a resident of this area. I have a child that goes to this school, and I'm regularly up in De La Viega hiking on a regular basis, and I know, Laura, I see you around. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all, my neighbors and friends. I guess what I would just add is that what we're here to talk about is prevention. And I come from education. I've worked in education for years. I've worked with Shebra for years. And we often underestimate the power of prevention because we're so caught up in dealing with the immediate, and we're in a crisis response mode, which is often very costly, very difficult, and is not necessarily looking ahead at how are we preventing what could potentially happen. So just this evening gives me so much hope in terms of what we collectively can do to think ahead, so that whether or not it's a human caused or an environmental caused, climate change caused issue that comes before us, which we know will likely happen, that we're thinking ahead and we're planning so that we can support each other and support our community. In addition to some of the things that Donna brought up, I think we do need to think creatively about what we're thinking about in terms of solutions. I think building our own workforce is a really critical component of the discussion, which really means partnering with education. We have residents in this community who want to stay here, they want livable wages, and so how are we supporting them in that pipeline? And I'm really excited to share that one of the things that's happening within our water department and with the County Office of Education is really looking at a partnership to build out career pathways, to Donna's point about what are we looking in terms of livable wage jobs here. And then also just speaking to the complexity of the issue, I think, unmanaged homeless encampments are not okay. When I was mayor, we had the Ross camp, and the impacts of that was tremendous, not only on those that were living there, but on the surrounding businesses in the surrounding community. And there are challenges with breaking down unmanaged encampments, absolutely. And ultimately, how are we supporting individuals getting the support they need to find success and ultimately independence, to be able to live successfully and belonging to our community. And that requires all the different components that were touched upon here. In terms of the enforcement components as well as the mitigation components, just constantly doing what we can. I think, one of the things we heard at one of our presentations at council recently is that if somebody doesn't want help, well, we just go back. We ask them, how are we gonna support it? We're not gonna give up. We're ultimately committed to seeing support. I really wanna thank my colleagues. It's not easy to make some of these really challenging decisions. There's been a lot of work that's been happening around really trying to get as many resources into this community so that we're drawing on those state dollars, whether it be for our homeless services and as supports. We had a $14 million carve out from the state while Councilmember Myers was mayor, continuing trying to get policies, grants underway, and then ultimately looking at all the different things that are happening in terms of some of the mental health supports and additional supports that are going on. But I can go on, and I know in the interest of time, I'm gonna stop. So I just wanna, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, no, I'm glad, thank you. And do you want me to, I know we're out of time, do you want me to do the wrap up, or do you want to take it back with more questions?
I think we got at least one more question we wanted to do, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right, I suppose, yes, I do. I should be more assertive. I'm up here with the big mic. Okay.
Go for it. You ask the question, then I'll wrap up.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, we actually have a representative here from CERT, Catherine. Hi. So the mic's going to need to run over this way, Dagmar. We've heard a lot about what the city and county are doing, but you represent a unique perspective, which is what can we do as a community? Should we think about preparedness? And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about sort of what your organization does and how people should think about you.
Oh, great, thank you. So CERT Community Emergency Response Team, we teach a free 20-hour course on emergency preparedness, how to get yourself, your family prepared. We teach modules on medical, search and rescue, fire safety, utility safety. It's a free course. We've developed an online and an in-person version. We're currently teaching a class, I think it's at Ben Lomond, starts on Thursday. I have some business cards over here. So you can get the information, help your families, help your neighborhoods. We have another program that's called Map Your Neighborhood, which is specific to what you're speaking about now, about personal preparedness, evacuation, how to utilize the resources in your community to help each other. That will relieve some of the not all the responsibilities, but take some of the pressure off the professionals. If they know individual neighborhoods can manage and have the information that they need to help themselves, that'll help them better prioritize life safety in other areas that do need attention. So how can we all work together to keep ourselves safe and our community safe? Hopefully that's some information we could get you. And once you have that information, if you want to be part of a team member that can be assigned to respond to other areas, other communities within the county that need assistance, would be great to help you. We've responded to the CZU fire. I walked that neighborhood, Highland Park. We walked Prospect Heights, going door to door, giving people information. We were at the temporary evacuation points in Davenport when we were concerned about the rains coming down after the CZU fire. We were at the shelter in Watsonville. In the city when we had the flooding of the benchlands and we had to relocate the homeless encampments there. We were responding to that. So all the different ways that we can help the community, would love to have you out. Come talk to me after this.
Thank you,
Catherine.
CERT members are there? Hey, all right.
Ooh, we could use more CERT members. All right. I'll just mention there was a question about CRISP, and it was mentioned during the presentation. I have a great demonstration tool that if you want to stick around afterwards and learn how to use CRISP, the community reporting portal, I'll do a little tutorial for you on the very large screen. So
maybe say again what CRISP stands for.
The Community Reporting Something Portal.
So who from the city can say exactly, because people say CRISP what?
Service portal.
Community Response Service Portal. It is a good app.
Go in and report.
It's a city program. I brought it up here, but again, we'll if this is something that's really interesting to you, we'll do it afterwards. You can come up here where I can actually show you and do an interactive tutorial.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I came to a Firewise Town Hall meeting, but it seems we're dancing around the issue here in Prospect Heights. Who started the fire? What started the fire in Laveaga? If it's homeless people, what are we going to do about it? I mean, I really don't know, but what happened? That's what we'd like to know. What I read in a sentence.
Well, thank you. That's one reason we had question cards, so write it on a question card. And we do have follow-up for you. We do have follow-up afterwards, so we'll talk to you afterwards. I would like to, at this point, since we're over time, I want to thank everybody. Thank all of you neighbors who came, and thank everybody from the city, county, community, and for all their great presentation and their time. We have Councilmember Kalantari Johnson is going to make some comments, and then our Highland partner, Angela Stanford, will close for us with a call to action and some solutions. I mean, some positive ideas. So Councilmember.
Thank you. And actually, if it's okay just to take maybe 30 seconds, I'd like to invite Chief Escalante. If you could just speak to that question, because I hear the frustration in the room. If we could just take 30 seconds and then we could stay afterwards and address it longer, if that's all right. Okay.
So, the fire in De La Viega, we believe it was human caused, and we believe it was accidental. So what that means is most likely from an unintended fire up there. It's a little bit of a tricky area because some of it is state property and not city property. And so we weren't 100% certain. Fire investigation is a science, and so we have to come to scientific conclusions. Unfortunately, we had to go undetermined on that, but we do believe it was human caused and we do believe it was accidental.
So when you say it's state property, does that mean it's at the armory?
No.
Okay, so it's not at the armory, it was
Correct.
in the park.
Correct. But there is state property up there. That's not on the armory side.
But it wasn't there, it was in the city park.
No. It started on state property. If you go on to GIS map, you can see where the state property is within the De La Viega Park area.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you left out the part about it being sparked and in nearby homeless encampments.
Sparked?
Yeah, that's your exact words.
I don't believe I told the reporter sparked.
Well, it says,
It ignited.
Points to what suspected to be an accidental human-caused blaze that was sparked in a nearby homeless encampment. Santa Cruz Fire Acting Division Chief Fire Marshal Tim Shields said Thursday.
Okay, well, sparked, I didn't use that word. That's not part, I don't use that in my vocabulary when I talk about fire investigation, so they might have used a word that I didn't use, so that wasn't a direct quote, even if they directly quoted me. So, as I said, it was ignited probably within a homeless encampment. So, again, it comes back to, we do a lot of outreach. We were just back there 2 weeks ago, walking through the encampments, identifying ignition sources in encampments. So, as a fire agency, I'm not a law enforcement arm. My resources are limited, so.
Is anybody staffing? The staffing is during the day. Is anybody looking at it at night when those fires are needed for encampments? Because
So we'll respond to 911 calls for smoke checks, and we'll go back into the areas and go and investigate. Sometimes we're able to find them, sometimes we're not, sometimes they're out by the time we get there, but we do respond to all 911 calls. We do.
I think you're going to be around for a little bit in case there's any questions, but we don't want to keep all of you here too much longer. Try to stay on track. You're going to wrap it up.
Yep. Thank you. Oh, great. Okay. Yes, we can stay here a little longer for those of you who have further questions. And as Abby mentioned, we will be responding to all of the question cards that came forward via an email. I do want to thank everyone who is here. You're here because you clearly care about this community and your community. I want to thank all of the presenters here. There is a lot of work that goes into fire prevention, homelessness response, and as you can see, there's still more work to be done. We acknowledge that. And one of the themes I heard tonight is that it really takes, what I wrote down, coordination, collaboration, partnership, and all of us working together. And all of us, I mean all of us. I'm gonna quote Chief Escalante. He said, for the first time, something like this, I think, for the first time in 27 years, it's the first time in 27 years that I can say with confidence that we finally have a plan. And he was speaking around the homeless encampment challenges. And I think that is a theme for tonight, is that the plan comes from all of us working together and all of us collaborating. This is the beginning of a conversation, not the end. And I invite you all to continue with this. I wrote down some of our call to actions is to be prepared. We had a whole slide of it. I'll try to synthesize: home hardening, knowing your insurance, having go bags, knowing your zone haven, developing a family communication plan, evaluating your home for hazards, and then staying connected. Creating or joining Firewise groups if you haven't already, creating or joining, having a CERT certification. And then staying connected with all of us, your elected officials. I think Supervisor Koenig is still here, is he? Yes. Staying connected with your elected officials and communicating your concerns with us. And asking us to be responsive, asking me, I'll speak to for myself, asking me to be responsive.
Are there any plans to open up a homeless camp on the west side of town?
I can talk to you directly right after this. It will take all of us. It will take all of us to address the very, very big challenges we have in our community. And I hope that you stay engaged as you did tonight. So thank you all for being here, and I'm going to pass it to Angela.
Hi, all. So I had this thing written, and I wanted to see how tonight went. And I first off want to say I am so impressed with the engagement that we had from the panel. One of the things that our community keeps saying to us specifically is that they don't feel like they have all the information they need to feel safe, to feel comfortable, to feel relaxed, to feel knowledgeable, to know how to help. The thing is if we're not willing to listen, we're never going to have that answer. The important part of what Firewise is trying to do is create community again. If we're not looking out for our neighbor, if we're not hearing voices, if we're not understanding concerns, but listening with an open mind, then we're not going to move forward. And I think that's the most important part of what we're trying to engage today, is moving forward, learning from our mistakes in the past, being open to how we can change those things, and understanding where we need improvement, but what we're doing right too. Because a lot of the time we just hear, well, we didn't do this and we didn't do that. But there's a lot of hard work and smart people and really engaged and passionate folks that are doing a lot to try to make this city better and feel like a community. When we yell and scream, we're frustrated, absolutely. But we have to remember that there are people who are tired and working on the other side too. We're not the only ones that are afraid and worried, staying up at night. So I want to relay to you that there has to be a sense of compassion when we're working with our neighborhood. And the focus of this meeting today was to do that, to bring people Look, there's a table separating the audience from the speakers, but that's it. They live in our community. They're part of who we are too. And they're working very hard to try to do better things. And all of us are human. We don't get everything right. And that's okay. As long as we're willing to look back and see how we can improve. And that's what I want you to take home tonight. So our call to action is to improve communication. That's our focus, that's our goal, that's the reason that Abby and I wanted to put this together. We want to feel like you're involved again. I hear a lot of comments, well, is the CRISPR tool working? Yes, it is. But there's limited staff for multiple reasons. Volunteers can help this. We're always asking for volunteers for the Firewise community. Sometimes we get great response, sometimes we don't. If you want to feel empowered, get involved. Help your community. Reach out. Ask for what you can do with programs, how you can support people in the office that are listening to you. And also, be kind. Be understanding, be compassionate, and be prepared. It's as simple as going to your neighbor and making sure that they can make it out in an evacuation. It's very easy and very hard all at the same time. But so is life. So please, 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 thank yourselves, thank your community around you for being here, being involved. I mean, showing up is just a huge step. I am so grateful that every single one of these people in this room, including over there, are here, supporting each other. And I just want to continue doing that. So, HighlandFirewise.org. That is where we will have the rest of the questions and the answers. A lot of the questions were repeats. A lot of the questions were a very involved answer. And I didn't want to take that away from anyone. I want you to feel heard. So we will have those sent off to the offices for people who can answer it, and then we will post them alongside the video of tonight's meeting on our website. If you feel you have other questions, please email us. We want to be that direct line, that go-between that brings community, volunteers, programs, officials, members, everyone together. Creating a better way of communication is the key to this. So thank you very much for being here tonight. I really appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Angela Stanford from Highland Ave. Thank you to all our presenters and all our audience. And this has been a first. Let's see what happens next. We all need your help. Good night, and thank you.